Welcome everyone to Superhuman Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Accurso, and today I get to introduce to you an amazing show guest. I mean, I know I say that a lot for a lot of the guests that come on because we do have amazing guests, quite honestly. But I can tell you that the doc that we have on today is bar none one of the premier experts in the world on longevity. Dr. Mitch Ghen has 36 years of experience in anti-aging and holistic and integrative medicine. In addition, he's authored dozens of articles in peer-reviewed journals. He's been a host and guest on hundreds of radio programs as well as television, where he's been the expert alternative health expert. And then also, he's an international lecturer on topics such as oral and IV nutrition, lifestyle changes, bioidentical hormone replacement, and stem cell transplantation. Get this, according to the president of the American Academy for Anti-Aging Medicine, the largest organization of its kind, 30,000 plus physicians in 113 countries, he says Dr. Mitch is considered one of the top 10 anti-aging physicians and consultants in the world. So we got a mover and the shaker on the show today, and it's going to be neat because he's going to be answering a lot of questions about longevity and health and nutrition. We're going to ask him about his journey, etc. So without further ado, Dr. Mitch Ghen, thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure, Matt. I just want to make sure that you did say something different than something you say about all the other guests. I feel I'm unique. I just want to feel that uniqueness.
Okay, let me say, he also could potentially kill you with his karate moves.
There you go.
There we go. So
it's great to be here. Thank you, Matt, for having me on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I was just on your amazing radio show that just goes out to 7 countries, and you had a bunch of people calling in, and I think what impressed me the most about that whole environment is how well you relate to your audience and how you're this brilliant doctor, yet you're so good at relating to people and getting on their level and figuring out their problem and making them feel comfortable. And obviously, you've been doing it for a lot of years. So let's start from the beginning. What made you want to do what you do today?
Well, I think at one point I decided, hey, I really need to do something. I really feel I can make a difference. I was the physical education director of a large Jewish Y in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I recall one night, it was about 11 p.m. No one was there except one secretary, and she said the perfect thing to me. She said, "Mitchell, what's the matter?" I said, "I'm just depressed. I don't like what I'm doing here. I need to do something else." She said, "If you could do anything, what would you do?" I said, "I'd have been a doctor." She said, "So what stops you from doing that?" And I said, "Well, I'd have to go back to school for 2 more years. I was a college graduate, but I didn't have great grades, and I would have to get amazing grades, and I have to do all the sciences." So she stopped for a second, and she said the perfect words, and I bless her every day in my prayers thinking about it. I don't even know if this woman's still alive. I have no idea, but I think what she said was great for everyone. And I said this actually to somebody yesterday who was thinking about going into the medical profession. And she said, "Mitchell, do you ever want to look back when you're 60 and say you're sorry?" And I thought about that for a minute. And I said, oh my gosh. The next day I enrolled into St. Joe's science program, which I did extremely well. And of course I got into medical school. So that was the beginning of where my journey in Trek took me. So that's what I started.
Wow. And the rest is history. And so now you're running a clinic in Boca Raton, and you're traveling and speaking to doctors all over the world. You have a private mentorship for your IV specialty program. So in your day-to-day rhythms, I know you're seeing people with cancer, Lyme, chronic disease, but you're the premier expert on IV therapy in the country right now. And I want to talk about that because I think people know what IV is to a point, like we know about the cocktail stuff that people give in their clinics and, kind of the wellness side and also the emergency side of things with IV therapy. But from your take, what's your philosophy on IV therapy and how it's positioned as a health modality? You there, Doc?
I'm here, Matt.
Okay.
I think we lost it for a minute there. Go
ahead,
sorry.
Yeah. And for those who maybe didn't get the question, I was going to say, you're the premier expert on IV therapy. From your take, what's your philosophy on IV therapy? How it's positioned as a health modality?
Well, I think it's a very important health modality. When you figure that the body at a cellular level works by nutrients and amino acids and minerals, then it makes it even more clear to anyone. Again, every doctor studies in the first week of their school, they study this metabolic process called the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle basically runs on all the nutrients that everything you see in a health food store, from L-carnitine, B1, B2, B6, B12, the essential fatty acids, it goes on and on. So it makes sense that there's a rightful place for IV nutrition when you figure that on a great day of your life, you may absorb 30% of what you're taking, maybe 40 if you're 20, 25. But even nowadays, that's even difficult. And by the time we get older and there's any medicines like proton pump inhibitors or anything that stops acid, cortisone, a lot of the birth control pills, etc., we're not getting that kind of nutrition. We're lucky if we're getting even 5% of what we take by mouth. So there's a rightful place, as I said. The biggest problem we have is we have lots of people out there who are learning IV nutrition. Unfortunately, I should say have or don't have the privilege. I do teach them. And they go out and they give this menu type of concept to individuals that go in and you pick out something like you're picking out a good, smoothie drink. I'll have the protein, I'll have the energy, I'll have the hangover, which for most of it is pretty much nonsense. It's not enough material to make any difference. So by doing it the right way, and that's the reason I brought it up at this moment in the show, is that if someone really sees what their biochemistry is by getting all the blood work done, and then developing a program that's specific and individualized for you, I don't see another modality that's as important as IV nutrition, part of the armamentarium of a physician, especially an integrative or anti-aging doctor.
Gotcha. And from your approach, your experience, do you feel like intravenous glutathione therapy has a lot of benefits? Do you feel like you could take it or leave it? What's your take on that?
Well, again, you have to recognize that glutathione is the number one intra or inside the cell antioxidant, and it works in what we call phase 2 detoxification. We have actually 3 phases. The first 2 are detoxing different things in your body. That's what the liver does. And the third, of course, is packaging it for its removal, either through the kidney or the bowel. So glutathione holds a very important, prominent place. And unfortunately, as we get older, our stores of glutathione go down. So often, to replete that, IV is the proper way of doing it. There are a few products, Matt, by mouth that have some proclivity to increase it. Unfortunately, not as good. Nothing as good as the IV. So it is part of a great anti-aging lifestyle wellness program to utilize a glutathione along with the other nutrients that we were mentioning earlier.
Right. Do you recommend that somebody be on, oral glutathione, or would you recommend that they do IV if they want to get the glutathione into their bodies?
Well, I think they can definitely support it with the oral. There are precursors that are often sold like N-acetylcysteine. Unfortunately, there are many conditions it doesn't convert well, but I think there are bound to phosphatidylcholine. It's a way of binding the glutathione. They're in sprays. There are a couple companies that make actually a nano particularized, which is a very small particle size of spray that you can put on your skin that rubs through. Look, it's better than nothing. Do I think it's the perfect way? No, but I think if you are unable to get IVs or you want to try to maintain your level, then that would be an additional route that would make sense.
Okay.
But you could actually check a lot of these oxidation levels and then determine whether or not your body requires it. If you're not sure, someone's listening, they may not sure. Do I need it? Well, go get the blood test and talk to your integrative doctor, and then you'll have a better idea, I think.
Gotcha. And when someone comes to you with, chronic disease, when they come to you with an issue of some type, I know you see people with Lyme, is your protocol start with lab work and then you base your program off of the lab work?
Always, Matt. I think we have to recognize that perhaps we look alike, but we all know that we're distinctively different. And so when you think there's 100 to, 200 trillion cells performing 868 trillion chemical reactions per second, it would be naive of any physician to believe that this drug is for everybody or there's
Right.
nutrients for everybody. And the only way to really do the best that we can do is to do within our reach a very good composite evaluation of our blood work, which gives us pretty much, as we can do today, our biochemistry indentation or our print. So we know, what you need as opposed to the Matt that lives down the block or even a identical brother. We would still have these differences that are just specific to the individual, to you. And then we would deal with that at that time. That would make sense.
Yeah, of course. And is there blood work, or is there lab work that you would tell someone, hey, this is the top 2 tests that you absolutely need to stay healthy and really get a handle on your health?
Unfortunately, I usually do about 116 tests. So that
Your
was
top 116.
That was a curveball.
Yeah.
But if someone said, if you had one thing that would help stop cancer, one thing that would help support longevity, one thing that would help us understand, depression, the one thing would be, of course, vitamin D. And then I would say, if there was only one test, if you pressed me, I would say, okay, let's get a vitamin D level. And by maintaining that in the optimized range of 60 to 100, you're decreasing risks of many other diseases, including autoimmune diseases, cancers, just the aging process. So as we went from vitamin D being just a vitamin for rickets, we've now elevated it to a semi-hormone, which makes sense. And that's what makes sense. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting, like, that we're talking about vitamin D, because in the past, I've read research that says you absolutely need to be on a vitamin D supplement, because no matter what, even if you're in the sun, you're not getting enough of it. And then some studies that say, you don't need to be on it, just get this amount of sun per day. What have you seen in your journey, in your research about vitamin D?
Pretty much, you have to expose 3/4 of the body at the time the UV light is the greatest, somewhere around 12 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then you really can't shower for 12 hours. And some studies have even said as long as 4 days.
That's
and I'm
scary.
telling you, that's pretty bad. No one's going to be near anyone under those circumstances. So I think and then I looked at about 2,500 individuals one year, about 4 or 5 years back, and saw that less than 1% had the optimal levels of vitamin D, and that's Florida. So I'm wondering, is that sort of the same throughout the U.S.? So I did find a study in Hawaii, and recently, as short of this a weekend ago, I spoke to 200 physicians about IV nutrition for 2 days, and a couple of them from Hawaii agreed and said the same thing. And I had seen a study from Hawaii, and they have great weather. They don't even call it out half the time. That theirs too was extremely low. So I think it's part of the food. It's part of our inability to convert it in our skin. And yes, the really only good way you're going to do this is not drinking milk, folks, but to take a supplement called vitamin D, as in David 3. And you'll have to really determine where your level's at to do that safely. Just making it up and taking this or that, you may never get to your goal. So get a vitamin D3 taken. Most physicians and your insurance will cover it. And even if it isn't, it's an inexpensive enough test to be able to do on everybody in your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the realm of supplementation, I know that you deal with a lot of supplementation. I know you're recommending certain supplements based off lab work, developing lifestyle programs for people. Are there 4 or 5 supplements that I know we talked about vitamin D. Are there others that come up in your head when it comes to longevity, fighting inflammation, and addressing, advanced glycation? Are there things that come up in your head? You're like, yes, people definitely need to be on these 4 or 5 supplements or more.
Well, I think, Matt, at least there are probably 5 or 6 that would be part of the legs of a table. And the 5 or 6 should be, no question, the vitamin D, you mentioned it. There should be a multiple vitamin. A CoQ10 which is known as ubiquinol, ubiquinone, and the word means being everywhere, is in our cells. And as we get older, we don't produce it as much. So that makes sense to be taking. A probiotic, because we're quite aware that we're 10 times more alien cells than human, and we have these different areas, what we call microbiome. The gut has its own billions and trillions of different bacteria, and the lung does, the vaginal region, the mouth, the skin. So we want to replace that. So taking a probiotic makes sense. I like that everyone takes some sort of essential fatty acid, of course. And lastly, I think that if you're over 35, 40 years old, it would make sense to take curcumin, because curcumin is probably the best anti-inflammatory. You mentioned it about inflammation, and who doesn't have that? And that's pretty much the nidus for, having cancer or heart disease. And by keeping inflammation down, you're slowing down, if not preventing, many of these chronic illnesses. So a good curcumin twice a day. So that would make 6 things as part of the table. And then everything else should be built around your individual biochemical tracing that you would determine by doing the blood work.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my big ones right now, I literally have it right here, is spirulina.
Oh, you like?
I love spirulina. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. But and chlorella, my body responds really well to it, especially when I'm dabbling in and out of intermittent fasting. It keeps me full. It's a perfect protein. It's a great detoxifier. I just really like it a lot.
I like spirulina, but Matt, because we can see each other, I don't think your listeners can. I'm worried that you actually have it right there on your desk, like a that your wife that you talk so highly about. Does she know that you were dating spirulina too?
Well, now she does. Now that you said something, I was hoping that you. It's embarrassing. Come on. I don't know if that's a disease, a lover of supplements. I don't know if they have a name for that yet.
Yeah, there must be.
Chondro.
We should actually coin the name of like an obsession with supplements, and I'll name it after you, Matt. Mitochondria.
I appreciate that. Mitochondria. That sounds great. Thank you. I'm honored. That's going to be my life's work. Right,
there you go.
But my wife would think that's hilarious that you said that, because she really does accuse me of being addicted to supplements, because I really do have this fascination with optimizing performance, and I do kind of experiment on my body at certain times. And I don't know, have you done that? Have you done the same thing before? Like kind of tried different supplements in different quantities and seen how your body reacts to it?
Yes, of course. And then I'll relate it back to the biochemistry and see if it makes a good difference. Because again, every time we do something, we don't really know how it's going to go. Nobody reads the book. Nobody's body reads the book of nutrition, nor does it read the book of disease. So you have to adapt and think out of the box and, change as you see that patient evolving in their care. So certainly, yes. It's kind of fun to do that sometimes, isn't it?
It is. So it really is. It's kind of it's an addiction of sorts, like we're talking about. But yeah, it's cool. Mentioning outside of the box. You obviously are an outside of the box thinker, Doc. You're doing things that mainstream doctors aren't doing, and honestly, you're doing things that potentially some people would have problems with, like, oh, you should be practicing that way, or this is how you've been trained, or whatsoever. But literally, you've pioneered your own way of doing things, and now you're teaching it, and you're really you're developing a revolution within America and the world, because this idea of getting to the cause is not, or hasn't been, very popular. And you've been practicing for a long time. I know you've seen history change and things change as far as what it looks like to care for the body and truly get to the root cause. But talking about your approach to medicine, what makes your approach to medicine unusual or against the grain?
Well, if we look at Western medicine, pretty much it's based upon the theory of if-then. If you get something, then we'll give you something for it. If you get high blood pressure, we'll do something about it. I have a very different approach, and mine's really the approach that if you have a leak in your roof, you're not going to then put a bucket underneath and catch the water. You're going to look for the cause, and you're going to fix the roof leak, basically. So mine is always to ask the three letters WHY. Why is this occurring? And I look back at the individual and I say, look, you're 40 years old, you have high blood pressure, and during the conventional concept, we're just going to put you on some medication and keep it where we want to keep it, thinking that's doing everything. I say, no, what went wrong? Why do you have this specific issue? So what I'll do then is go back and say, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, did you have high blood pressure? No, I didn't. Well, then something went wrong. Is it the one cell part of the lining that's no longer good? Is it an accumulation of many things that there's a toxicity with a toxic metal? Is it because there's inflammation in areas there shouldn't be? In other words, find, if you can, the root cause and treat the underlying disorder, and go back, if you can, to what that individual was. Me, I always try to approximate that individual's chemistry, biochemistry, and of course, we're going to get the blood work we've been talking about, to that which would have been or was when they were in the best stages of their life, and the healthiest are somewhere between 18 and 25 for a male, and up to about 32 for a female. Now, we can't always get there, Matt, but if we can approximate it, then that person's going to not only do very well from a symptom perspective, but we're also taking care of the underlying causal relationships that are there. That makes a whole difference. And it actually, in many cases, either takes people off medicine, prevents them from using a lot more medicine, or keeps them from ever needing medication. And again, the easiest concept is, which I talk a lot about to the doctors and also on the radio show, no one goes from day one to day two and they have a heart attack. No one goes from day one to day two and they have cancer. No disease does that, with rare exception of, if you get hit by a car, something of that nature. Typically, you have decades, and that's real medicine, of things going wrong. The problem is I shouldn't say no one, that's a poor generality, but basically most are not recognizing nor looking for where you are along that timeline between day one and the heart attack.
Right.
And the same thing with cancer. If we do, there is so much lifestyle changes that we could do, Matt, that can reverse these things and keep people healthy for a long time, and perhaps never get these horrible chronic diseases.
Right.
That's my thinking. That's how I think.
Nail on the head. I mean, that's that's how I was raised. And I just think it's so cool that you've been practicing so long. I mean, 30 years ago, really 20 years ago, it's like, you look at how far we've come when it comes to having our eyes open to how the body heals, how it functions. But I mean, we both know, it's like, we know that much. I mean, the tip of our pinky of how the body works, and how, and the brilliance that it's been made in the likeness and the image of. And so I think it's really neat how long you've been practicing and doing these things when it wasn't popular, and now I think, with social media and, Instagram and Facebook and all these things, the sharing of ideas, and doctors like you being able to get their message out in a more profound way in your radio show, for example, people are learning, people are growing, people are asking the right questions. A mentor of mine always says, we have to ask the right questions. When we ask the right questions, now it's no longer, a doctor diagnosing us, but now we're actually empowered as a people. And that's one of the really neat things about your practice as well, Doc, is that you're empowering people to live outrageously healthy and to question their health and say, why do these things happen and how do I get to the cause? I think it's really, really cool. Along the lines of, performance and having optimized health, you obviously are not only practicing that in your practice, but you're practicing it in your own life. Give us a glimpse as to what your morning routine looks like. I'm always interested in morning routines. What does it look like when you wake up to when you head out the door? What are the strategies and techniques that you use to stay healthy?
I'll pretty much give you the overview of my day,
okay,
because I think that pretty much is the same most of the time, somewhat routine-ish. Of course, anytime it can change being a doctor, but for the most part, I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I'll do, of course, is I'll shower and then take a real cold shower, and then go hot, and then cold, and end with a cold. I think that starts your day. Then I feed my cat and my dog, and that's a smile on my face, to feed the animals. And then I have to have my cup of coffee. My cup of coffee comes with an iPad in my lap, sitting out over the ocean. I review probably 75 different articles in the morning,
Mm.
and then get dressed. Off I go to work and see patients, of course, and then eventually I finish whatever time I can, and then I go and I work out in the afternoon. And my workouts are typically, I like lifting weights. I'm not a long distance runner. I like to lift weights a bit, and then I like to take a whirlpool, shower again, and then come home, eat some dinner, and relax. And perhaps I'll read again. And in between that, Matt, I literally wake up with my first thing in the morning. First words out of my mouth is always some gratitude or prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do take at least 40 minutes every morning to meditate prior to my going out the door, and I'll do it again before I go to bed. And I'll do, prayers and meditate and help myself become not just a person who's just out in the world, but realizing that I'm part and parcel to the whole. I'm a small piece, and hopefully doing my job to make this world a better place. And that's what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I love how simple you are and methodical with it. Especially nowadays.
Wait, Matt, did you just call me simple?
I called you very exactly. I'm paying you back. Good. I'm paying you back for making up a name about me for supplement. Supplement addict. Okay, well, that's your payback.
I got it.
But I love it because I think a lot of times we get real, complicated and like diverse of like what supplement we're taking here and there. And I know you do. I know you take a significant amount of supplements. And if we had time, maybe on another show, we'll talk about all the different supplements that you take and why. But I love the simplicity of that because I think it's, number one, very important to wake up with a mind of gratefulness. Healing starts in the mind first. We got to have our mind right. And when we know our purpose on the earth, and when we're waking up with that purpose and then being thankful for it, it's just a game changer. So I think that's awesome. Moving into what I call a rapid fire round, Doc, I want to ask you a couple questions, and these are just going to be rapid fire answers, and we're going to hit on a few things. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Go.
All right. So if you had one billboard that the entire world could see, what would it say?
Be happy. Enjoy life.
Love it. Be happy, enjoy life. Love it. What creates the most peace in your life?
My family and people and my patients and my audience. I love the people around me, and I love making them smile and happy. That's what creates the peace for me.
I can tell how you talk and how you conduct yourself. What do you like to do in your free time?
I like to work out. I like to read. I'm an avid reader, and I like to just relax and sit around and enjoy my time with my fiance, and I do like sex a lot. Can I say that on your program?
You can absolutely say that.
It.
Beep. We just did a beep to that word.
Did you put it out? Or we'll do the beep as I say it. I actually like
beep.
I'm just saying, Matt, I want to be honest because my motto is on all my programs: look good, feel good, and have great sex.
Yeah.
And I think that combination, being with the right person, and that's the icing on the cake for me. So that's what I say.
For sure. I love that.
Did I just ruin all your other questions, Matt?
Yeah, you did. Now I'm all red and flustered. What was the last habit you formed and why?
Working out. And the reason why was because I found that I was working very hard, and then I realized that if I don't keep my own health, how am I going to be great and healthy for my patients and my listeners, viewers, this type of thing? So I realized that if I don't do for myself, there's an old Jewish expression that goes, if you don't do for yourself, who will and when? So if you have to be responsible for your health, and that's what you do, you empower people, Matt, to be responsible. And I've realized that. And I realized that if I didn't go out and work out, if I didn't eat properly, if I didn't do the right things, who is going to do that for me? Am I going to wait for a doctor to do that for me? No. Was I going to wait for a spouse to do that? No. You have to take responsibility for your health in this world. Remember, we get one body. In it houses whatever you believe, and it's okay no matter what you believe. I have total non-judgment about anything. But if you believe in that there's something greater with you in spirit, then you need to take care of this body we have.
I want to remind everybody out there, this is a doctor talking, a world-renowned expert talking. I think that some people just don't hear that from doctors very often. So I think it's awesome. So all this will be in the show notes, by the way, everybody out there listening. Anything that Dr. Mitch Ghen talks about, where it's going to be in my show notes. So if you're lighting up your paper with notes, don't worry, it's going to be in the show notes. Okay, next to the last question. What books do you recommend to our heroes out there? Just give me one or two books that you're into or something that's really impacted your life.
Well, I'm somebody, I read really, I like to read only two things, which is true. I read either medicine, and I've written 4 textbooks, or I read spirituality. I think one of the books that have impacted me recently, I guess within the last year or so, was Bruce Lipton's book.
Oh, I love it.
Okay, so we and I were on the same page.
Love it.
I love the concept. Before, I'm glad I live right now, to tell you the truth, Matt. If I lived years ago, I probably would have said, well, that's not scientifically proven, therefore. And now I've gone long beyond that, and I've realized that there's a lot more that we don't realize. And what you think is what you create, and you do change these cells. So I highly recommend. He's written a couple books. Both of them are excellent.
Actually. Yes. Biology Belief Changed My Life.
Yeah, it's a great book, awesome. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If you could pick one action step for our listeners to take from this call, what would it be?
The action step would be is something new. It's always a 3,000-mile journey, as we've been taught, starts with the first step. So if it's the first step to an integrative doctor and getting your blood work done, that makes sense. If it's saying, okay, I'm going to eat differently, I'm going to work out, just make one small step and head in that direction. You don't have to make tons of changes overnight. You have a whole life in front of you. So make the step, but make the steps, and recognize one thing. At the end of the day, the only person that will judge you is you. And that's the key to all this.
That's good. Good word. Good word. Well, Dr. Mitch, last thing I want to get out to everybody, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your amazing books and all the things that you're into?
Well, first, I hope they'll join, if it's okay for me to say, my radio show, which you were absolutely amazing guest. And the radio show, they can get an app on any smartphone, even on the computer. And the app works anywhere in the world. It's called Boca Chamber Radio. That's BOCACHAMBER Radio. Boca Chamber Radio. It's a free app. And I am on every Monday through Friday from 12 noon to 1 o'clock. And that's Eastern time. I hope you'll join us and call in. It's all free show, fun. Look good, feel good, have great sex. That's what we talk about. Yeah,
and it is an awesome show, by the way. I mean, the energy on the show, the people calling in, it's just, you can tell like people are pumped up to connect with Dr. Mitch. It's just a really, really neat environment. So I encourage everybody out there, get on the show. You're going to learn a ton. If you want to learn about high performance, you want to learn how to take your body to the next level, if you want to learn about addressing disease and dysfunction. I mean, he even talks about mindset on the show. He talks about love on the show, gratefulness. I think it's just a show that encapsulates the human frame and the mindset and the things that actually take place in order to be healthy. So definitely get on the show. Dr. Mitch Ghen, ladies and gentlemen. Doc, thank you so much once again for getting on the show, taking time out of your day to do this.
Matt, it's such a privilege to talk to your listening audience, and I wish all of them a great and healthy day. God bless.
Thank you, Doc. And thank you, all of you out there, for getting on with myself and Dr. Mitch Ghen. It has been a pleasure. As always, go out into the world, live your purpose, be grateful. Know that you are superhuman. It doesn't take an act of God. It doesn't take you accomplishing some huge feat in order to be superhuman. That's been ingrained in your DNA since the day you were born. So go out there, rock it out. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.